Well, welcome to the Church Office podcast.
My name's Gavin Smith, and if you're joining us on video, then here's a little wave.
We're excited to have Nigel Ring join us.
I've never actually heard the word wicked and accountant put in the same sentence.
All right, well, good morning and welcome to the Church Office podcast. My name's Gavin Smith, and if you're joining us on video or you're listening, thank you so much for following the podcast and getting involved in a podcast about church administration. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but we love it. And today's special guest is Becky Thomas from Beeston Free Church in Nottingham. Becky, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, it's great to be with you.
It's brilliant. It's great to have you. And the legend that is Becky Thomas is heard around UCAN a lot. So to have you on the podcast is brilliant. So we're talking about conferences. I attended a conference that Becky was running, a UCAN conference, a cutting edge conference in June. I've also just run a conference in Rebuild, conference getting church leaders together and encourage them after the pandemic. So I think we had 150 church leaders come and attend a conference. So we're talking conferences today. You are the conference king, aren't you?
Oh, I don't know about that. I've kind of found myself accidentally involved in leading the UCAN Cutting Edge Conference team over the last little while, having been involved with the team for a bit longer than that. Done a few bits of conference organising at my home church, and yeah, it's great fun. Good. It's slightly chaotic at times.
It is. So before we go into that, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in Nottingham in the church. You're an operations director, is that right?
Operations manager is my title. So there's another thing that I ended up in, not entirely in a planned way. So I started out my working life nursing in neonatal intensive care.
Oh, wow.
And then as my kids gradually arrived, I was working part-time, and then when my youngest was born, I didn't go back to nursing. The realities of trying to do that with three very small kids, 3 kids under 4, it just wasn't practical. So I came out of nursing. And then when my youngest started school, I was kind of starting to think, what should I do? So I said to the guy who was in my role before me, I've got a couple of hours a week. If I can do anything to help in the church office, then I'd be really glad to do that. And a few years later, I found myself in my current role.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens, isn't it? Yeah. You offered some part-time voluntary thing, and now suddenly you're running the place. I love that. It's great. Yeah. So you've got 3 kids, you were saying. Now we are involved. We are connected not just through UCAN and having the same job, but we are ballet parents. I mean, I'm a ballet dad. You're a ballet mum. One of our kids dances, don't they, for Royal Ballet and stuff like that. So we've connected on that recently. That was a strange thing to find out, because you're in Nottingham. I'm in South Wales, and we're doing the same thing together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, isn't it, how you discover in the Christian world that you know some of the same people have moved between churches. You chat to people and you realise that as well as knowing people in common, doing the same weird and wonderful job in the world of church admin, you also inhabit the weird world of dragging kids around the country, or rather being dragged by your kids around the country for different activities, sports, dance, all sorts.
And it's strange, because I tend to do my kind of church office work on the days when we're traveling to Birmingham to do Royal Ballet, and you're traveling into Birmingham. I didn't even realize you're traveling into Birmingham. We've probably crossed each other, and you know, I'd love a little wander around the shops there as well. And so it's fun, isn't it, to kind of like utilize our time as best we can. But I'm often doing church office stuff, and so the ballet world, taxiing and everything else. It is a joy.
Costumes, shoes.
Oh, point shoes, nightmare. Yeah.
Sewing ribbons in point shoes is my most hated job ever.
I can't say I do that, to be honest. My wife does that. Yeah, I'm not a sewer, so you know.
I think my husband would tell you the same.
Well, it's good. Well, let's talk conferences then. So how do you start? So you've been asked by UCAN, right? Put on the cutting edge conference. You're in charge of it. What do you do first? Like, what do you start with?
I think the big thing for me in starting out in planning any kind of conference is thinking about what's it for, who's it for, what are you trying to achieve with it, really? There are lots and lots of different reasons that you could run a conference. There are lots and lots of valuable reasons you could run a conference. The reality is you probably can't do all of those at once, so don't even try. So yeah, I think just thinking really carefully about who are you aiming at and what would you really like them to go away from that conference, having learned, heard, experienced, been a part of.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? That kind of starting with a kind of success criteria. At the end of the conference, what would we love people to be saying about the conference? What would we love people to leave with? Yeah, that's where we start, that kind of success criteria. You know, is this a relational conference where we're like building together? And that might be what you do if you're in a local church context, putting on kind of a church weekend away that feels a bit like a conference. Or you're bringing leaders together and you're thinking, right, how do we train them? What do we want them to leave with and equip them with? What are some of the needs that we're seeing? You know, just stuff on teens and transgender was a big thing through our kind of conference. And we had someone specialist come and just do some teaching and raise the awareness for pastors of some of the issues that the church leaders are going to face. So yes, you do start with that kind of success criteria and think, right, what do we want to deliver here and who are we delivering it to? And that comes across well. Have you kind of reviewed the last conference and seen, you know how successful you were, you know, so the cutting edge conference has all the feedback come in and been positive?
Yeah, so I mean that's one of the huge blessings with running a kind of regular conference. We always ask at the end of the conference for some feedback from those who come, and that's really informative as we now think ahead to our next conference, which I'm sure will be here before we know it. It's the trouble with regular annual conferences, they come around very quickly. But yeah, I think just really helpful to hear from people what their experience was, to hear people's reflections. So often we'll give some quite specific questions that are seeking to kind of dig out that this is what we were hoping you get from this conference. Was that your experience? And inevitably sometimes feedback like that's a bit of a mixed blessing, because you'll get somebody who says it was great and you'll get somebody else who say no, you missed it completely, and you have to accept some of that. But I think looking at the feedback in the round is just really helpful.
Yeah, it's good. It's that kind of I mean, we're jumping to the end of what you would do at the end of a conference, but it's useful, isn't it? I think as you think about success criteria, you do want to build some time in later, don't you, to review and take people's comments seriously. And if someone's bothered to fill out a feedback form, then you want to hear it, don't you? And so important. So we've set our criteria for success. We've set our goals. We've set our kind of what are we wanting to achieve. What are you thinking next? What's going around your head of where you need to go next?
I think team is probably the next thing, really. If you're doing a conference of any kind of size, probably bigger than about 3 people, I'd say don't try and do it on your own. I think there's lots of value in having team rather than trying to do a one-man job. Some of that's just about sharing the workload, but there's just lots of value in having different people's perspective, different people's input, different people's skills and experience. That all really contributes to helping to pull a conference together. So if I think about pulling the UCAN conference together, I'd always call myself a fairly competent computer user, but put a sound desk in front of me, not a clue. Try and work out how to stream something, not a clue. So I need people alongside me who can go, yeah, fine, I'll run the sound at the event. I know what I need to do to connect whatever they call all these little gadgets and boxes and whatever, and by the magic make sure that it appears on a live stream that you've promised to people who are coming along. And just to bounce ideas off people, to be able to say, thinking about a seminar about this, what do you think? Do you think it would be valuable? So team definitely is my next thing.
And that's useful, isn't it? And UCAN, it's great. You can pull on members, can't you, to kind of who've experienced, who've been to conferences before and will be able to input. And that's right. Team don't try and do this on your own is the message here, isn't it? Yeah, because you are going to be overwhelmed, aren't you? I mean, one of the things that we did as part of our planning was we kind of departmentalized everything that we'd need for a conference. So, you know, kind of the people side of things and managing people, caring for people, we put in together what does it look like on the kind of teaching side and resources side, the venue side and what was needed to manage a venue. And we kind of looked for different people that had skill sets in those kind of different areas. If you think about the kind of different departments, somebody who had a real, you know, keen eye on looking at the kind of finances and booking tickets and things like that. And that is a genuine challenge, isn't it? The whole ticketing stuff, because we found people book last minute, you know, like within the last 2 weeks of your event, where you're like, you've done the early bird, you've tried to get people in as quickly as you can, so you know, actually, are we going to break even on this? Because that is a bit of a worry sometimes. But yeah, what are your experience on that whole side of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge challenge, isn't it? Because very often, if you're running a conference in a venue that's not your own church building, venues are wanting you to commit very, very early. So, I mean, we've just run our residential cutting edge conference. We'd anticipate doing the next one in 2 years' time. I've already got the venue saying, would you like to book your dates for next time? You know, and you think, yeah, I guess we probably ought to think about that, but 2024 sounds quite a long time away. But then, of course, as soon as you peg down dates with them, they then want a deposit from you. So you're fairly committed financially, even at that really early stage. So having the confidence that people are actually going to come is huge. I mean, we do use things like super early bird and early bird, trying to encourage people being good stewards of their church's finances to get in there early. But yeah, promotion by multiple means. You know, the kind of multi-channel communication is really, really important. Some people will diligently read their emails, others glance at them if you're doing well. There'll always be somebody who says, conference? What conference? I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, apart from the 6 emails that have already gone to you, but kind of that kind of joy. But yeah, those are the challenges, I think, and you do have to have that bit of confidence. And that's where I think a team approach, so having a leadership team that are saying, we really want you to do this in a church context, it is helpful, because you've got backup and you've got people you can say, you know, this is the number of people we need to be able to break even. You know, then we can start thinking about, oh yeah, it'd be great to give some books and resources away, but you know, we've got to get over that first hurdle of meeting what the cost is of this event and you know, delivering that. So yeah, all these things make the whole part of running a conference difficult, don't they, and challenging. I think that's what people don't like about being involved in stuff like this. They're like, I just can't juggle all these things in one go.
But I think what you say about the whole leadership getting behind it, even those who aren't going to be practically involved in organising the conference, you need the whole team to be on board, to be talking positively about it, to really be able to articulate, well, what's the conference about? Why should people be signing up? Why should people be coming along? You know, not just to communicate that by different, you know, by email and by social media and all the rest of it, but to hear different voices speaking positively about this. You know, we don't want the conference to be Becky's conference, to be Gavin's conference. We want this to be whatever the organisation we're representing's conference, and for there to be that buy-in and ownership from everybody.
It's crucial, isn't it? Yeah. It really is, yeah. We did a joint, I think it was like 6 or 7 churches together, a church weekend away. We called it the Gathering Conference. We went to Aberystwyth University, and I think we had about 1,200 people on site with kids and stuff. And it was great. And the church leaders pushed it and drove it. And then we had people in each church that came together to kind of form the team to run it. And it was just this really lovely kind of like partnership working that takes place, but everyone was kind of on board with the vision of what it was for, and you know, we'd never done one before, but now they're like, when can we do that again? We loved it. We want to, you know, let's do it next summer. And you're like, I'm not sure people can afford to do it yet. You know, it took us a whole year to go and do it, you know, to plan it and to work it through. So it's these are some of the challenges that if you're listening in and you're thinking like, right, I've been given the job of running a conference for the first time. What am I going to do? Where do I start? Hopefully you'll pick up some helpful tips here from particularly from Becky, who's a pro at this. But and the next thing, I guess, is venue's key, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, in terms of, you know, you've worked out your goals, you're thinking, right, what kind of venue is going to help us to deliver what we want to deliver? What are your thoughts on venues and getting stuff right with this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really challenging one. I think particularly if you're looking for a residential conference, there isn't a plethora of venues.
Yeah.
There certainly isn't a plethora of venues that are affordable. Price is often such a big thing, isn't it? It can be a big commitment, whether it's something like the UCAN conference, where we're asking different churches to support their admin staff in attending, or if it's a church weekend, for example, recognizing that people who come, perhaps families who come, the cost soon adds up.
Yeah,
so I think that's my first thing, really. Be realistic. There aren't lots and lots of great, easy venues out there. So do your homework.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's then, you know, what accommodation? Does the accommodation work for the kind of people we've got coming? What do you want to do? Do you want to be all together all the time? Because that affects kind of what main meeting space you've got. Do you want to be able to break out into different groups? Things like catering can often be a big part of a conference. We've been really fortunate with our residential conference, a UCAN residential conference, that the conference centre we use organise all the catering for us. Yeah. That's a great blessing.
That is a blessing, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. And they did such a good job, didn't they? I think it was the Kings Park Centre, wasn't it, in Northampton, where we went?
Yeah.
And I think you're right. You guys picked a great venue for what you wanted to deliver. I love the fact there was like coffee on tap in this kind of huge lounge area, and a lot of it was like hanging together, networking, getting to know people. And then you had this like brilliant main auditorium, and then you had all these breakout rooms. So it really did work. I mean, did you guys find that place and were like, right, we're sold, we're going to stick here for a number of years? Or
yeah, so we've been using this venue for quite a number of years now, and it's just worked really well. You know, we're people from all over the country, so location is quite important.
Yeah.
Is it accessible to a good range of people? Has it got good facilities? And it ticks those boxes for us. Yeah. I think our challenge will be, and in some ways I hope our challenge will be, that we'll outgrow it.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure what that'll look like for us next. We're using a very large proportion of the capacity over the last couple of conferences. So I hope as we continue to grow, that'll be our next challenge presented to us, really.
Yeah. It's good, yeah. And we chose for our conference, Aberystwyth University. Now, it's not, I wouldn't suggest that we do a UCAN conference. It's a fair old way heading west. But yeah, we used them because they just had experience of running events. They dealt with the catering, you know, 1,200 people to feed and to get through seating and to get through room accommodation. They just had all that experience. And I think that made a difference for the running. You've got a venue that are good, they know what they're doing, they're experienced with different size groups, or the group that you want to bring in. Those things are worth checking. And I bet, well, if we outgrow Northampton for the UCAN conference, you're going to be traveling the country, because like you say, there aren't loads of venues, are there, to find? We've
no, and I mean, we've in between our kind of every other year residential conference, we do a day conference.
Yeah.
And that's definitely shown us the challenges of different venues. We've not really settled on a venue for that one. We've used a few different things over the years. That's, again, it's a challenge with location when people are just coming in for the day. But yeah, we've definitely had some not so great experiences, particularly with that one. We've often used venues where they're quite happy to host us in terms of the building, but they perhaps don't organise catering. And we've had to bring caterers in. You're then trying to find caterers who'll supply.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily know the caterers. You don't quite know what they're going to supply. Some of them have been better than others.
Yeah, and people remember the food, don't they? Massively.
Of course they do.
Isn't that like just a big part of if you can get the food right at your conference, then people, that's halfway there, isn't it, to make it a good conference. It's so true. And we've had to work on menus with our different conference teams and accommodating all the dietary requirements and all those. I mean, it's complex, isn't it? And you want to serve people, and you want people to come and not have to bring their dairy-free, lunch, because we can provide it. But it's all
I think
these
probably
things.
our worst example of that was one year we had a caterer, and we said, we've got these people who are dairy free and these people who are gluten free, and basically their approach was to provide a box of salad for anybody who was allergic to anything. The rest of us got lovely sandwiches, but the poor people who'd indicated dietary requirements seemed to get about 3 lettuce leaves and a tomato. It was awful.
Oh no, yeah, we've definitely had some bad experiences with things like that. So it's true, And the rebuild conference that we did, we end up hosting at our church, and we've got an Ibis hotel that's right next door. So we were able to kind of have people stay there at like £40 a night. So it actually made the conference really cheap, because that whole accommodation and food is some of the most expensive parts of it. So
absolutely.
But so venue, all those kind of practical things. How far in advance are you trying to work out the program that you're doing for UCAN and the speakers and all of that? Is that stuff that you've done a year in advance, or lastminute.com? How are you approaching that whole area?
I'd love to say we had it all sewn up a year in advance. The reality is a little bit different. But I mean, because we're running an event every year, at about the same time every year, it is pretty much as one conference finishes, we're starting to think ahead to the next conference.
Okay.
It is another place where if you're running those regular conferences, the feedback's helpful. So we've asked people in the feedback from the conference we've just done, are there things that you'd like us to cover next time we meet together? So that's helpful input. But we're certainly looking to pin down our main speakers a good 6 months in advance.
Okay.
Often they're busy people, and we need to get these dates in their diaries so that they're able to commit and be ready to speak for us.
And there's so many things that interlink into this, isn't there? So you've got to pin down a speaker on the date that you need for your event or conference, and then you need those people for your promo, don't you, as well? So it all like ties in together, and then you need to get your promo early because you want to drive your ticket sales and make sure that we get this, we meet some of our requirements on the finance side to be able to kind of go big and make it a good event as we can. And all these things tie together, which is why I've lost my hair, I think. It's happened. If you're listening on podcast, and you won't be able to see my wig is not there anymore. So but what other tips have you got? Because you've got tons of experience on this. What are the things that are going through your mind that you're thinking, right, I need to do that. This is good. This is a helpful thing to think about as you go through.
I'm a great fan of lists. I have endless lists, and I do try and keep my lists in a digital and fairly ordered fashion, because I do revisit those lists every time, so that I'm not reinventing the wheel. Our former pastor's wife referred to me as an organisational freak. That probably, she said it in a very loving way.
Of course.
That probably is true. So there's nothing I love more than organisation and logistics. So it's probably why I love conference planning, really. But just keeping yourself really organised, making sure that you know what you've got to do, when you need to do it, where are your deadlines, who else do you need to communicate with, who needs what information when.
And are your lists connected to some sort of timeline? Would you be thinking, right, this list needs to be done by this set date, this one, and do you break it down like that?
So I've never really got into some of these project planning apps. That's not something I've done. my Word-based documents and my Excel spreadsheets have served me well, but that's a personal preference thing. That's just what I'm used to. I think there probably are great organizational tools out there that I've just not tapped into. But yeah, so I have a bit of a kind of timeline that says, okay, by this date we need to have done this. I often put the deadlines a little bit earlier than they probably are in reality, recognizing that there's always slippage along the way.
I love that. I think it's helpful. I'd be the same. I think you know, there are some great apps out there, and some of our team use them to manage like maintenance schedules and things like that, which are great. But yeah, there's nothing like getting it on a big piece of paper and just writing it all out, and just having your lists connected to all these different aspects of departments that need to be sorted out. And everyone can see what's happening, and it's there's traditional method. It's useful. Take whatever's in this brain and whatever you're thinking, and put it on a piece of paper and go from there. And yeah, those little tips are great.
And I think probably the other thing in that is recognizing that I won't be doing this forever. And I'd love to be able to hand it on to somebody else who can take it forward and not just dump them with absolutely nothing. I've hugely benefited from the people who were doing this before me, who've given me really helpful kind of information, and not in a kind of straitjacket, you must do it this way, but just in terms of, these are the things that we thought about. And some of them you say, no, I'm not going to do it like that. But it makes you think. So I'd love to be able to hand on to whoever takes this on after me, something that's helpful and makes some kind of sense. You know, I can't give them my brain, so having some stuff written down is really helpful for that, being able to hand it on.
Great. And it's lovely, isn't it, to kind of, that when you've got that team approach, it's lovely to see people rise within the team to take a lead on stuff as well, isn't it? There's that lovely, okay, actually let's bring somebody on board here who, you know, maybe their contribution is not going to be huge in this first year, but that contribution is going to grow over the next 3 years to the place where actually the 4th year we're going to pass it on, and they're going to be leading it. And it's great having all those kind of things in place that can do it. How do you find, like, you put together some really cool conference packs in these like big brown envelopes, and there was like chocolate in them, there's pens, there's all the information, there's brochures, there's books. I mean, that when you arrive at a conference, that was a real blessing to like receive that. Everything's detailed out, where everything is, what the timetable is. I mean, you did a really good job on that. That was excellent. How much thought goes into those packs?
I mean, those packs are something that have developed over the years, I guess. The idea that a conference pack is useful is one that was definitely handed down to me. It is very much something that's team effort. So, you know, we've got great people who can do graphic design. That's really not up my street at all. But yeah, just thinking about, actually, for the kind of conference we run, we have people who are walking in who might know nobody, who might never have been to a conference like this before and really not have much idea what to expect. For people to come through the door and have something that's just really clear, this is what's going to happen when, this is what you can expect. Little things like recognizing that 6 months ago, when somebody signed up for this conference, we asked them for their seminar choices, and they probably don't remember what they selected. So reminders on that kind of thing. As you mentioned earlier, things like giving away a book or whatever is often something that you have to kind of hope to do, to get to the point where the finances allow for that. But it's just a really nice way of saying, here's a really useful resource, something we've found valuable, ties in with what we're talking about. And I mean, everybody likes chocolate, don't they?
So that's great. And you had like dairy-free chocolate. You were able to accommodate everyone. Like the details that you go down to is great. And I think those are the things that people really pick up on, don't they, and enjoy at conferences. So we got to a point where we were able to have some money in the budget to say, right, well, how can we bless people over the time? So I think one of the evening meals we did a barbecue outside in the sun, and so we just opened up a free bar for people to have a beer, and it was just 1 or 2 beers, and they absolutely loved it. They thought it was the best thing ever, that there was this kind of like free bar, free drink at a conference, and it was like £300 to run it for 150 people. But that lasted an impact, that people were able to just go and hang out and have a drink with somebody else. They moved on, and so we had this flow of people getting to know people, which was good. And it was just that little idea that came, that little bit of detail, and it just it blessed people, which is that's so rewarding as well, isn't it, for us conference organisators to go, oh, that worked, that was great.
And it's often those little things that perhaps people aren't expecting when they come into a conference. They kind of come in and they know that you're going to give them a bed, and they know that they're going to get some kind of meals. But it's those little extra things that just make people think, oh, actually, the fact that I've got easy access to coffee all the time, or the fact that I've got a little chocolate bar, or I can chat to somebody over a beer, those kind of things are just those little extras that I think make people feel valued. Yeah, absolutely right. And I love the fact that you can put on a conference, because my elders and leaders here will go to lots of different conferences, day conferences, and hear different teaching on someone went to London and did a week on the Gospel of Mark, and they get to hear all about how to open that up, how to preach that the best way you can preach. And there's just very few things like that, isn't there, that church administrators or operations people in the background can go to and just be blessed and refreshed and equipped. And to hear about the UCAN one, to go, it is such a blessing to bless these people who are serving behind the scenes in churches with resources and time and network. You've done a great job, Becky, doing that and pulling that off. I think having benefited from it so much myself, I just hugely see the value of it. The world of church administrations and operations is quite a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you think about even trying to articulate to somebody, well, what is your job?
Yeah.
And you kind of go, and there's no real way of explaining straightforwardly to somebody what it involves. So to be able to do something that facilitates people who all inhabit that weird and wonderful world of getting together, of being able to share funny stories of the things we found ourselves doing. I was sharing with somebody at the conference, probably my best moment was when somebody walked into the ladies' toilets at church and found me trying to do a temporary repair on one of the toilets with a paper clip and a piece of blue tack. You do these crazy things, or people find you up on the roof and they say, "Is that in your job description?" And you go, "Well, not really, but it's not in anybody else's either, so here I am." And just to be able to share those stories, to encourage one another, to recognize some of the challenges that we face working in church, in an admin or ops role, for people just to get it is just so valuable. So that's a really important part of it. And then, as you say, just to get really good input, there's often lots of opportunities for Bible handling training and those sorts of things, which of course is hugely valuable in our churches, but doesn't always quite hit the nail on the head for some of the things that we face as administrators and ops people.
No, I think that's absolutely right. So to have a conference designed just for administrators and those working behind the scenes in churches is lovely. So full credit to UCAN and the board and those who attend and make it work, and the cutting edge team that you've worked with to deliver it is wonderful. Well, Becky, thank you so much for your time. It's great to connect with you. Love what you've done. Love the way that you bless UCAN with your time and your expertise in putting a conference on. if you're listening and you think, oh, I've got a specific conference question, or venues, or you just want to connect with the church office or with Becky, and then please get in contact at questions@thechurchoffice.co.uk. We'd love to hear your feedback, and any questions that we can assist with. We'd love that. Please check out the website for new resources and new articles that are coming on. The website's free for everyone to use, and hopefully there's things and resources on there that will benefit you and bless you and encourage you. We've been chatting about UCAN. If you're listening and you're not a member of UCAN, and it's the UK Church Administrators Network, then seek them out, look at it. Is it something that you'd like to get involved in? There's something wonderful, isn't there, about being part of a network, Becky? And I know you've been a member for a long time. So give me a little promo for UCAN. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, as I've just been saying, really, to be able to connect with other people, to share wisdom, to share ideas, to share resources is just such a blessing. We come from a hugely diverse range of churches. You learn and see so much about different churches, but it's just really encouraging to see churches all over the country committed to sharing the gospel, and thinking about how do we do that well, how do we make sure that what we do as churches is done well, so that the central focus is the gospel.
Absolutely right. And you've heard me say it numerous times on the podcast, you know, the work that happens behind the scenes enables and enhances the work of the gospel. Without people on the ground doing the stuff that we do behind the scenes, the gospel wouldn't go out. So crucial ministry in the life of the church, and if you're serving in that role, then thank you, and know God's smile and encouragement to you in what you're doing behind the scenes. So well, Becky, thank you so much for your time. It's great to connect, and we'll look forward to it. We'll have to get you back on the podcast again soon, because you're so good at this. You're just like chatting away and filling us in, and it's lovely. So I'll see you in Birmingham sometime on the Valley Run.
Indeed.
Take care. See you soon.
Thanks, Gavin.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.